Reporting from Indianapolis, I've made it, and a random commenter named Matthew says, "Okay, David, I'm here now. We can start the live." Indeed, we can start the live because Matthew is here. 49ers update from the NFL Combine. Festivities get underway tomorrow. Well, actually, the festivities have already gotten going at Prime 47, the bar right down the street. I look out the window and I see the Indiana Pacers arena. They lost to the Denver Nuggets tonight, but we're not here to talk about basketball. We're here to talk about Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford, who's been in the news. Those of you who missed the numbers this morning, Peter Schrager of the NFL Network said that Matthew Stafford is looking for a new contract, a pay raise of $50 million a year from the Los Angeles Rams, which apparently is problematic for the Rams, even though they have won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, because Stafford is 37 years old. And yes, $50 million plus is a lot of money. Meanwhile, the 49ers and Brock Purdy are looking to get a new contract done this offseason, and there's talk of potentially $60 million for Brock Purdy, because Dak Prescott, and, speaking of the guy paying Dak Prescott, that's Jerry Jones. We're going to see his bus driving around town. Literally, Jerry Jones drives, or he doesn't drive. He has a driver, but he rides around in a big bus. It looks like a tour bus, and it's got the big Dallas Cowboys star on it. And he parks it in front of wherever he wants to be. So if he wants to be at Prime 47, the steakhouse turned bar that is the nightlife hotspot of the NFL Combine, right here, right on the corner, Jerry Jones is going to park right in front of Prime 47. He'll walk in, he'll buy people shots, he'll do what he needs to do, and then he'll return out to the bus and go on to the next spot. Anyway, Jerry Jones paid Dak Prescott $60 million a year. The question is, will Brock Purdy approach that kind of money? We know for sure that Matthew Stafford will not, because he's 37 while Purdy is 25. That's a huge difference. These two guys are operating in separate spheres, although the spheres, there is a chance that these two price spheres might influence each other, and I'll discuss why. And this is the kind of stuff that I want to gather intel on over the course of my time in Indianapolis, because this is the first time that executives and agents, maybe even some players, and obviously all the draftees or potential draftees are in one spot to begin the 2025 league year, which officially kicks off in March. So this is the prelude to free agency, and obviously something that's going to set up the NFL draft. But the big news right now in the NFL is Matthew Stafford and what's going to happen to him, because the Rams have essentially opened a legal tampering window for Matthew Stafford, because he wants, according to Peter Schrager of NFL Network, a contract worth at least $50 million annually. Stafford right now is playing on this deal. Well, that's tape of Ben Barch. We're going to look at that in a second. That's from Brad Graham. This is the deal that Matthew Stafford is currently playing on. 2 years left on it. You can see 2025, he's due a base salary of $23 million. He's already been paid the signing bonus and this option bonus. He's also due a roster bonus of $4 million. So $27 million coming in for Matthew Stafford in 2025. In 2026, it's a $26 million base salary plus $5 million roster bonus. So doing the math there, that is $31 million, but none of it is guaranteed. So 2 seasons left for Stafford, and the money that is set to roll in is $27 million plus $31 million, and he wants at least $50 million. He wants some new money on this deal, especially since only $4 million of guarantees remain with that roster bonus that kicks in next month. The problem for Stafford is that he's 37 and he's actually ranked number 18 in the advanced composite, the EPA and the CPOE, the composite score over the past 3 years. He's performed better than that in the postseason. We'll grant Matthew Stafford that, but still the Rams over the past 3 years are 1-2 in the postseason, with the win coming this year against Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. But they lost to Jared Goff and the Lions last season. They also lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the snow after beating the Vikings this year. So Stafford, there is a lot of value in being able to perform in January and then into February. And we know that Matthew Stafford has done that for the Rams. They won the Super Bowl in 2021. We know that he hasn't played poorly in these postseason games. In fact, he delivered the best outing against the Eagles that we saw in this postseason before Philadelphia won the world championship. But we have to weigh everything. It's not just regular season play. It's not just postseason play. It is both. We have to look at trends. Then we have to combine those trends with how a player scores out athletically, how he scores out age-wise. And a lot of the things that Matthew Stafford has on his resume right now aren't necessarily conducive to a huge money deal. Again, over the past 3 years since he won the Super Bowl, he's ranked number 18 in the advanced quarterback composite. When we look at Ben Baldwin's site, and he's got the EPA, he's got the CPOE. The accuracy has diminished. The efficiency has diminished for Matthew Stafford, and I don't think it's a big surprise. He's 37 years old. He's managed to maintain good play, better than a lot of these other QBs, Trevor Lawrence being one of them, Sam Darnold being another one of them. Darnold might be available this offseason, right? I mean, he's managed to deliver better than those QBs in the postseason, but the overall body of work for Matthew Stafford has really not been one, especially when we combine it with his advanced age, that suggests that a deal of over $50 million is a sound investment. But Stafford wants that. And obviously the Rams are balking at it, and we can see why they're balking at it, because the Rams have been a forward-thinking team under Sean McVay and Les Snead. They've been willing to get out ahead of things. They've been willing to move players. They'd rather be too early moving players than too late moving players. And I think in this case with Matthew Stafford, they're saying, wait, he's going to want over $50 million. We already worked to meet his contractual demand last year. They borrowed some money for the future, moved it up to the present in 2024, a little bit before training camp started. The Rams don't want to do that again. They realize that they have a declining asset at quarterback in Matthew Stafford, and they want to set themselves up for the future, and they want to make sure that they don't overpay to the declining asset in the present so that they don't compromise what's going to happen to them in the future. The 49ers are in a situation that people are comparing, and I'm comparing this situation to Matthew Stafford's, but when I compare it, I find it to be very different. Brock Purdy is 25 years old. That's not a declining asset. The best play in Matthew Stafford's career didn't come until post-age 30. The best play in Steve Young's career came at 33, and Joe Montana's career at 33. For Peyton Manning at 28, for Tom Brady at age 30. So all of these quarterbacks have seen their best football well beyond the age that Brock Purdy is at right now. So when we talk about the Brock Purdy contract negotiation with the 49ers, it's going to be more expensive than something for Matthew Stafford because he's younger. Stock rising. For Matthew Stafford, the numbers have shown that it is declining. Purdy's number one over the past 3 years since joining the league in the quarterback composite, in the EPA, CPOE. Again, Stafford, number 18. That being said, the reason that the Rams have opened this up, the whole legal tampering phenomenon that the Rams have allowed, Stafford's representation, his agent, Jimmy Sexton, can talk to other football teams. They can talk about what those teams would potentially want to send LA for Stafford in a trade, and they can talk parameters of a new contract. This doesn't mean that the Rams are necessarily going to let go of Matthew Stafford, but they're opening this up to legal tampering so they can reach a resolution, because they obviously disagree with Matthew Stafford's contract demands. So teams that have shown interest in a trade are the New York Giants. Obviously, they've moved on from Daniel Jones. The Cleveland Browns, obviously, Deshaun Watson, even before tearing his Achilles twice, might have been the worst quarterback in football. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they constantly seem to be needing a quarterback. The Russell Wilson, Justin Fields season is beyond us. We'll see if any of that lasts beyond this season, but I would expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to be interested in somebody like Matthew Stafford. And the Raiders, now a new regime. Pete Carroll is the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, those are 4 teams that very, very logically could be interested in Matthew Stafford. Now, how much would any one of these teams be willing to send LA's way for Stafford, knowing that they would have to pay him as well? It sounds like he wants that $50 million per year at least, based on what Peter Schrager said. The New York Giants have the number 3 overall pick. That seems like way too steep of a price to pay for a 37-year-old quarterback who hadn't been on top of his game for 4 seasons now, since 2021. But they also, by virtue of the fact that they're picking 3rd in the order, have pick number 34, the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. So would that be enough? I mean, the Rams are sitting here and they realize that Matthew Stafford has been a declining asset. They don't want to commit the $50 million plus to him. They respect what he's done, and they're still, playoff contenders. They won the NFC West this year. They pushed the Eagles further than anyone else pushed the Eagles in the postseason. So they realize that there still is some juice with what this team has and with what Matthew Stafford has. But I think they also simultaneously realize that it would take a major upset for them to actually win it all. That to put themselves in the highest probability position of winning year in, year out, they can't just keep on riding a 37-year-old quarterback into the ground. So at the right price, they'd be willing to extend this partnership with Stafford for another couple years, at least one more year. But if it's not at the right price, it really starts compromising the Rams' bigger picture outlook. This is a team that was very recently in salary cap hell. It starts compromising that outlook without any sort of guaranteed return right now. So, every man has his price, and the price for the Rams has to be the right one for Matthew Stafford. Well, but what is the price for the Giants? I mean, you think Brian Daboll and a desperate front office, desperate coaching staff, I think they'd send a 34 overall pick in a heartbeat because they're just trying to hang on to their jobs. Same thing with Andrew Berry in Cleveland. That's one reason why Andrew Berry, maybe the main reason why Andrew Berry said, I'm not trading Myles Garrett at this point, because he's been the GM since 2020. He doesn't want to lose his job. The second that he trades Myles Garrett, who really insulted the GM and the Browns with his trade request by saying that these guys aren't winning anytime soon, I want to get out of here. But the second that they obliged that trade request in Cleveland, you're waving the white flag. You're saying, okay, this is not working out. We're rebuilding. We're heading into rebuild mode. It might be the smart move. I think it would be for the Browns, because I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. But the front office, whose jobs are on the line, I think is clouded, and they're not seeing it like that. I think their vision is clouded in this situation. So that said, a team that might be willing to mortgage its future just to try to get some feel-good playoff wins now, or a feel-good playoff berth now, might be the Cleveland Browns, just by nature of the desperation there. The Pittsburgh Steelers, mediocre year in, year out. Yeah, they don't have a losing record, but Mike Tomlin has also shown he doesn't really have a high ceiling. I think somebody like Matthew Stafford would actually fit into the philosophy there in Pittsburgh, because I think the reason Sean McVay, if Stafford was guaranteed to give you top 5 efficiency and a run to the Super Bowl, the Rams would be bending over backwards right now trying to pay him over $50 million to keep him happy. But the Rams obviously have their doubts, and he's ranked number 8. Like I said, the composite rank is 18 over the past 3 seasons. It was number 16 just this past year. I mean, he's been a mediocre quarterback over the course of the past 3 seasons. That, yeah, he's turned it on a little bit in the postseason, but not enough to be better than 1 and 2 in the postseason. The Rams would be doing this business with Matthew Stafford. They'd be saying, hell yes, we're going to pay you this money if he were still at the top of his game. Right now, I think that they're looking for a sucker. They're either going to find a fair deal with Matthew Stafford that makes sense for them, that doesn't compromise them in the future, or they could find a sucker, and it could be one of these teams. The Giants, the Browns, the Steelers, and then the Raiders have new leadership. So I don't want to assume that the Raiders are going to go out and try to make a horrific deal. But with an older coach, it is a new coach, though, Pete Carroll. I would have to assume that there's, after they've gone through so many coaches, so many quarterbacks under Mark Davis, there's got to be some kind of pressure to finally deliver. it is a Raiders thing to bring in some of these older players past their primes, and I wouldn't discount them either. So those are the 4 teams that have been rumored to have interest in Matthew Stafford. And if the LA Rams do indeed find a sucker in this situation, then they can have some serious draft capital coming their way. But it's just still really unclear where Stafford's market value lies, given all the drawbacks, given the age, given the fact that I don't think that he's the healthiest quarterback anymore. I mean, he's one of the toughest guys in the league. He's fought through so much, played through so much over the course of his entire career. But at some point, the body starts breaking down. And I think that we've seen some of those red flags with Stafford here over the past couple years. It'll be fascinating to see where this ends up. And simultaneously, the 49ers will be trying to resolve their situation with Brock Purdy. Purdy, again, 12 years younger than Stafford. I think that you could look at the actual quarterback market, the top of the actual quarterback market, to gauge the comparisons for Brock Purdy. Prescott's up there at $60 million. But then you've got other guys in the 50s, like Justin Herbert. We saw him in the postseason. Trevor Lawrence in the 50s as well. There's a whole range. And it's funny because the most accomplished QBs, considered the best QBs in the game, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, they're in the mid-40s, but that's just because the market has seen such crazy inflation. And the salary cap market, again, is going to see inflation. Once the official numbers are out, we're going to be looking at a salary cap of maybe $280 million for this season, which ups the ante even further. Purdy can surf that wave because Purdy is the prototypical age QB. He's played his 3 years, 25 years old. He's demonstrated his worth to the franchise. You can surf that wave of rising quarterback salaries. Stafford is trying to fit in through the back way, right? But Matthew Stafford is 37, trying to milk more money out of an existing deal. He obviously believes that he has some leverage just because he's a quarterback who's won games for the Rams. But the Rams are already thinking about their potential exit, and we'll see if this leads to divorce or if it leads to more money that for Matthew Stafford that the Rams can agree on. I do think, and I promised I would link back to this. Mike sent this to me earlier. He said if Stafford gets about $50 million, he said that it might negatively impact what Purdy is looking for just because they play in the same division. And obviously Stafford had some success against the 49ers last year. I'm not sure. I really think that Stafford and Purdy are on different scales here. I think that you cannot conflate the younger QB's contract, the one where you're going to, the 49ers, they'll try for 10 years. Obviously Purdy's not going to say yes to that. Patrick Mahomes said yes to it, but it's smart for teams to try for as many years as possible, provided that they're not tethered by fully guaranteed money. If you can limit your guarantees to the first 3 years, but you can get 10 years of team control, obviously you're going to want to do it if you're a football team, because then you don't run the risk of a player hitting free agency and you can just sit there as the market continues to rise. And Mahomes is renegotiating his deal on a year in, year out basis with the Chiefs, but the Chiefs still have that final contractual control. The bottom line is that when you sign a young quarterback, you're looking for a long deal. You want to get ahead of the price, which has been inflating every single season. And obviously you're more than okay with a long deal, especially since deals in the NFL are so player friendly. But with an older QB, and this is Stafford's contract, you're looking at it from the opposite angle. With an older QB as a football team, the Rams are already thinking, okay, when do we exit this deal? They can exit it now. Of course, there'd be a dead money hit because of all the signing bonus money that they've pushed into the future. But this is okay, how long is this guy going to play? How long is he going to play effectively? We see the downward trend. Last year, they took money from the future and squeezed it into the present to keep Matthew Stafford happy right before training camp. It is a completely different tune that the Rams are singing with Matthew Stafford, his age and his contract, than these teams like the 49ers are singing with Brock Purdy and a younger quarterback. Yeah, it's just happens to be a parallel development. Stafford situation, Purdy's development, and Purdy's situation in the same offseason, which makes this all the more interesting. And then there's Geno Smith, who was tweeting something today. There was the LeBron video where LeBron picks up his bag and walks out of the press conference, and people are saying, oh, wait, are the Seattle Seahawks about to part ways with Geno Smith, who doesn't have anything guaranteed left on his contract? I mean, Geno's situation is fascinating. He's been middling in terms of efficiency. The one thing about Geno is that his completion percentage over expectation has actually led the league over the course of the past 3 seasons, ever since he took over for Russell Wilson in Seattle. This guy, he's aired the football out. He's made tough completions downfield. Nobody's saying that Geno Smith doesn't have talent. The problem is that the efficiency hasn't been there. I have never seen somebody lead the league in accuracy, completion percentage above expectation, yet be below average in efficiency. And Geno Smith has been number 18 in EPA, expected points added. So he hasn't managed games all too well. There's obviously a limit on the quality of QB play that you are going to get from Geno Smith. The Seattle Seahawks aren't paying him at the level of one of these top tier guys. He's around, I think, set to make $31 million this year. And that's only going to be coming through a roster bonus and base salary, which isn't guaranteed at this point. Mike texts me saying Geno Smith to the Raiders makes sense. Pete Carroll. Geno's been with the Seahawks since 2019. Geno was like, Russell Wilson was still playing some decent football for Seattle, and Geno was his backup. Played 2 games, started 2 games, I think it was 2 games in that 2021 season when Russell Wilson was hurt. I think that was a broken finger for Russell Wilson. So Geno Smith goes back to the Pete Carroll era of Seattle, and to the Raiders actually would make a lot of sense. I like that from Mike. Mike also points out that the 49ers, if Matthew Stafford gets $50 million, they're going to try to use it as leverage in negotiations. I think they can try to use it as leverage in negotiations, but at the end of the day, the reality is that, Brock Purdy's agent can sit down and say, these are 2 separate things. What are you guys trying to use Matthew Stafford's short deal, this reworked contract that you've come up with, that the Rams have come up with? How are you trying to use that it's an apples and oranges thing. How are you trying to use that to compare to Brock Purdy's deal, my client's deal? I think that would be the answer. You're operating on these on the scale of long-term deals for younger quarterbacks, which teams can fidget around with to tailor the cap situation to their needs. I could even go back to my Brock Purdy contract proposal to show you what I think the 49ers are going to do. Good thing that I had it ready. Here it is. This was up on the San Francisco Standard. So you're dealing in the world of a deal like this versus the world of a much shorter term deal. And I only gave Brock Purdy 5 years on this extension. If the 49ers could get more, they could stretch things out even further with some option bonuses. They probably would limit it to guaranteed money and only 3 years, though. But they would have more team control in that situation. So this caliber of contract and this structure of contract really doesn't mix well with the structure of contract that Matthew Stafford's asking for. And it's a young man's league. 25 versus 37 is a big deal. And obviously Purdy's efficiency over the past 3 years, number 1 in the league versus number 18 in the league for Matthew Stafford in the composite, is also a big deal. You go to the San Francisco Standard to check that article out. Price wars, Purdy against Stafford. What else does Mike have to say before I get into the questions here? Mike says that Stafford is going to be over $400 million in career earnings. You would think he'd be more interested in winning a Super Bowl. Well, he has won a Super Bowl. And now then there's the Kelly Stafford dynamic. I don't know how much she's pushing for Matthew Stafford to get top money, but she's on podcasts talking. So we first learned of some of this discontent, not through Matthew Stafford himself, but through his wife, Kelly Stafford. That was about a week or 2 ago, and we immediately went and made a video about it. And she was talking about Cooper Kupp and the Rams trying to move on from him. You know, the Rams, again, that's another good example of the Rams being a forward-thinking team. Bill Walsh, when he was building the 49ers in the 80s, forward-thinking executive, it was better to get rid of a player a year too early than a year too late. Well, the Rams are looking at that with Cooper Kupp, who hadn't been his top self since that 2021 season. But as much as we want to talk about Kupp and his decline, Matthew Stafford has also declined. Mike is asking me, is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer? I don't know what the delineation for a Hall of Famer at quarterback is. He's played for a long time. He's played on 2 different teams. He has won a Super Bowl. That obviously helps his case a ton. You guys think that Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer? I'm sure there's going to be Rams fans that say that. I'm sure there are going to be football fans that say that. And then you've got what my friend the other day said. He texted me that Matthew Stafford is Jim Everett, who was lucky enough to play with Aaron Donald. It might be a little harsh. I think some people took exception to that in the comment section, but whenever we talk about the weapons that Brock Purdy has gotten to play with, the weapons that Jimmy Garoppolo has gotten to play with, we do need to mention that Matthew Stafford was a 500 at best quarterback until he showed up in LA and had Aaron Donald on his team. And he had Calvin Johnson with him in Detroit. He had Megatron on his team in Detroit. So it's hard in this league. And this is a good reminder to realize that nobody in the history of this sport has won alone. It is a team sport. And I think Matthew Stafford is talented as hell. I do think he has some weaknesses. I think he puts the ball in harm's way too often. I think that started to rear its ugly head this past season. He should have thrown 2, maybe 3 picks against the 49ers. 2 were clean drops early in the game. Anyway, the question is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer, or is he just Jim Everett who had a chance to play with Aaron Donald? Why don't we prep for some of the draftees to watch? This is the combine, after all. I'm in a hotel room in Indianapolis. I've been texting a bit with Mike throughout the day. Mike has some cool philosophies when it comes to the 49ers and the draft. He notices patterns. And whoever's in favor for a mock draft show where Mike comes aboard, and Mike is obviously in front of a camera as well. You've seen him once. Those of you who didn't see it, you missed out. Mike and the mustache Mike. But Mike studies these mock drafts more intensely than anyone, and he studies tendencies really, really effectively. And he noted to me, and I thought this was really interesting, that the 49ers over the past 2 years, ever since they seem to have started listening more to their R&D department, research and development in the draft over just the coaching staff. And they had a really successful draft last year in 2024. Mike has noted that the 49ers drafted in the first 3 rounds the positions that were known to be deep in that 2024 draft. So in 2024, it was wide receiver, cornerback, and guard that were known to be deep. The 49ers, in turn, drafted Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver, in the first round, Ronaldo Green, a cornerback, in the second round, and Dominic Pooney, a guard, in the third round. So Mike thinks that might be a pattern. So in 2025, and we've already talked about this some, and it's hard to get really specific until these guys actually start performing the athletic tests, meeting with teams, and going on their 30 visits. But we do know that the defensive tackle class is one of the really deep components of this rookie pool. The DTs, there's 41 of them have been invited to this combine here in Indy versus only 25 last year. We know that running back is very deep this year. People are going to be screaming, no, Kyle, please don't take a running back in the third round again. But running back is deep. And we know that edge rusher is solid, and tight end. This is actually a really good tight end class. The last time that there was a supposedly good tight end class, the 49ers picked 2 of them, Cam Latu and Braden Willis, but they're still looking for a true number 2 to George Kittle. So there's 4 position groups that are exceptionally strong this year. And I think DT, defensive tackle, is at the very top of the list. And, Mason Graham as I was texting with Mike, we've talked about this for the course of the past month. Mason Graham of Michigan would be a dream for the 49ers, but they're picking at number 11, and it's not likely he falls to number 11. I know Daniel Jeremiah was saying, well, I don't think he's going to test all that well, so maybe he falls to 11. I think that, we're talking about the Raiders, and we're talking about Al Davis, Mark Davis. Al Davis loved how fast guys ran. If there's a receiver who ran a 4.3, he would draft him. But I just think that the obsession with 40 times and combine testing is a thing of the past. You see so many of these prospects, Shedeur Sanders being the latest one, they're not even going to be doing the athletic testing at the combine because teams have gotten smarter as far as who they're going to draft. They're not just looking at the 40-yard dash, something that actually doesn't have very much to do with football. You're rarely just sprinting in one direction. This is a change of direction sport. It's a contact sport. Teams have developed better ways of finding actual football players and evaluating actual football talent. So I don't think that Mason Graham is going to drop just because he doesn't test particularly well. I mean, that would just be an indictment of the entire selection process, right? You have to draft based on the quality of the football player. And Mason Graham's put a lot on tape, so I think he's going to be safe in the top 10. Something else can cause him to drop, but I don't think he's going to athletically score so poorly that he'll fall to the 49ers. So then you start to look at other defensive tackles. And since the 49ers went after those positions of strength in the draft last year early, what if Mike is right? What if they follow the same trajectory this season? Derek Harmon from Oregon, Walter Nolan of Ole Miss, Kenneth Grant, who is Mason Graham's teammate at Michigan. And then there's Deion Walker out of Kentucky, who is massive. I mean, we're talking 6'7", 344 pounds. The 49ers really struggled against the run over the past 2 years. They were number 29 against the run this year. The league is downsizing. So are the 49ers, or at least they were downsizing. Maybe they just need a massive block gobbler in the middle. Maybe they really need somebody who's 6'7", 344 pounds. They were thinking that with Javon Kinlaw, who was also massive back in 2020 when they made that draft pick. But I think that there's going to be a reversion to size up front, and maybe this combine is going to headline that change of trend. So look out for Deion Walker out of Kentucky, 344 pounds. He's huge. Mike, there's a Mike in the edge rusher class. It's funny. Mike and I have been talking about Mike Green out of Marshall, who led the nation in sacks. He's going to be an edge rush. He really impressed at the Senior Bowl. We made a whole video about Mike Green when I was in Paris a couple weeks ago. And then Nick Scourton, who's out of Purdue in this state, in Indianapolis right now, Purdue and West Lafayette, right? Yeah, West Lafayette, Purdue. Lankier edge rusher, 6'4". It's a talented, good edge rushing class, some good technique on display, some good athleticism. It'll be interesting to see if the 49ers do dip into that pool early in this draft, since that also is a stronger position. But one thing that Mike made the case for when we were talking today was tight end. And there are a couple tight ends that the 49ers could pick around the third round. Somebody like Mason Taylor, LSU, he's 6'5", 256. Somebody like Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, a little bit shorter, he's 6'4". But whenever there has been a good tight end class, and good tight end classes don't come around every year, the 49ers have been very interested in dipping into it. And I think that if you look at the offense, skill position-wise, the one most glaring weakness for the 49ers has been a second tight end who can catch the ball and take some pressure off of George Kittle. I think that's for this offense, that could be something that kicks it into overdrive. Mason Taylor's dad, by the way, the 6'5", 256-pound tight end out of LSU, his dad is Jason Taylor. So he's got that NFL pedigree. That's a little look at the 49ers early round machinations, if you will. I'm just looking at trends from last year. I thought Mike had a great insight on how the 49ers behaved early in that draft, and we can kind of compare that to where the draft might go this season. It's still a couple months away, right? Not till late April. Right now, this is when the prospect testing starts. John Lynch is going to speak on Wednesday, so we'll get our 49ers intel then. And free agency happens before then. So I think it's, mock drafts are generally silly. But if you guys want to do a live mock draft where we look at who people want to select with each pick in the chat section, raise your hand and we'll run it. We'll do it when we're back in the studio. And of course, I'm going to come out with my mock draft. And I'll be honest. I put out the mock draft for clicks. Anybody who's saying that they don't do the mock draft for clicks is lying. Like, the draft is a crapshoot. It's like taking a bunch of darts, throwing them up against the wall. Every single round, you're further back from the wall. So first round, you're pretty close, but you could still miss. You could still not hit a bullseye with the first round. Whereas if you're pick 262, 7th round, you're all the way on the other side of the gym. You're like, you're way back there. 49ers threw pick 262 at Brock Purdy, and they hit a bullseye. But anyway, the point is that we don't know what's going to happen 2 months from now in the NFL draft. It's in Green Bay this year, right? Yeah, Green Bay. Cool. Remember walking through town. They were excited for the draft this year before the 49ers played the Packers. But we don't know what's going to happen. I compare it to another thing. It's like an NFL team. You're asking me what play the 49ers are going to run on the 11th play of the game. I don't know. We don't know who's going to drop down to 11. We don't know exactly what the table is going to look like then. We also don't know what the research process is going to yield. The interview process is going to yield over the course of the next couple months. So, and everything that you learn, you could probably throw 95% of it out the window when the draft hits, because you could love 8 different players, but if they're all off the board, once you come to pick, then you're not getting any of those 8 players. So that's why mock drafts are silly. People are going to act like they know so much about all these players and that would be a perfect fit, even though you never know about the NFL. It's totally hypothetical as to who's even a good fit for the pros, let alone an individual team. So people are going to start to act smarter than they actually are. They're going to make a bunch of mock drafts. They'll throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall. On average, maybe 1 or 2% of what they throw up against the wall is going to actually come to fruition. And then they'll go back and they'll point at the 1 to 2% that they got right and say, hey, look at me. I got that right. And it's disingenuous. Everybody can be an expert when they're speculating. That's how the pre-draft process works. That's why we view this with context and we stay away from just the baseless mock draft after mock draft. But we can do one for fun here with all our viewers. So if you wanted to see that happen, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead and give a thumbs up into the comment section, and we'll make that happen next week. So this is the NFL Combine. Everybody, welcome from Indianapolis. A little bit earlier today, we got word that the 49ers have re-signed Ben Bartch, offensive lineman, really good offensive lineman, might have been the second best lineman on the team this past season. This is from Brad Graham, who cut up the footage of Ben Bartch in Buffalo wearing number 78. We didn't see enough of Bartch because the high ankle sprain, but the pass protection was exquisite, 93rd percentile. The run blocking was good as well. Everybody follow Brad Graham at the SF Niners. That's some sturdy run blocking against Ed Oliver of the Buffalo Bills. Ben Bartch in the snow, anchoring down. Good stuff for San Francisco. I mean, I can go to the San Francisco Standard right now, and we can go to our O-line piece, because this is what we came up with when we started the State of the 49ers series with the offensive line. And I looked at a number of things. A, the pass protection was a lot better than people give it credit for on the whole. Ben Bartch was one of the reasons over 2 games. They're better on the right side, right? Moving on from Spencer Burford to Dominic Pooney was huge. Colton McKivitz got better. Jake Brendel wasn't as bad as people say that he was in pass protection. I don't think he was at his best in pass protection this year, but the weak link actually in pass protection might have been the left guard, Aaron Banks. And then when Ben Bartch came in, they improved in pass protection. Here, I could even illustrate that. This is pass blocking percentile. This column on the right is run blocking percentile. You want to be darker blue. You don't want to be darker red. Ben Barch, 93rd percentile pass blocker. Aaron Banks was 43rd percentile. Brendel was 39th percentile, so he was below average in the pass blocking. Puni, it's funny because Puni was at a very high percentile through about 3/4 of the season, but he hit a rookie wall. He still kept up really good run blocking. There are no worries about Dominic Puni. 49ers have a monster in Dominic Puni. He's actually the highest graded rookie offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus. But the question is, where does Barch fit in? And I think he fits in to start at left guard for the 49ers. I don't think they re-sign Aaron Banks, and I think they've got a potential upgrade in Ben Barch, which to me is remarkable because it's going to be at a much lower cost than Aaron Banks. They're able to sign Ben Barch on February 24th before he became an unrestricted free agent. That's really, really big. So that's the protection that we're talking about for Brock Purdy. Another way that you can protect your quarterback is run the football better. Look how poorly the 49ers performed on first down runs. Now, I know a lot of this is no Christian McCaffrey. 49ers this past season also saw Jordan Mason get hurt, but I do think that the cumulative run blocking of this team needs to be better because this is the first time since 2017 they've been below average on those first down runs. All right, this has been the 49ers update from Indianapolis. Do you guys have any questions? Maybe we wade into the Q&A. Talking about price wars, Purdy and Stafford. I don't consider these two negotiations to come from the same cloth. I think Purdy's is very separate because he's much younger and he's been much better than Matthew Stafford over the course of the past 3 years. I mean, that's something that I know I showed the other day, but maybe it's worth going back to right now. It's going to Ben Baldwin's website and just illustrating what the past 3 seasons have looked like at the quarterback position. Because people get way too caught up in hype without actually looking at data. They look at a few highlights, they look at a few social media posts, and they let that form their opinions on some of these players when maybe that shouldn't be the way that things are done. So over the past 3 seasons, we're going to sort this by the composite that I talked about. Top quarterback in the league, Brock Purdy. Allen, Tua has scored really well in the composite. Mahomes, Hurts, Jackson, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow. You have to scroll all the way down to number 18 to get to Matthew Stafford in the composite. Just sharing the data. Even Geno Smith has been higher than him. Well, how has Geno Smith been higher? Well, Geno Smith has an ungodly CPOE, completion percentage above expectation. Purdy's in the top 5 there, but Geno Smith is number 1. But somehow, some way, this is what I was talking about earlier. If we sort it by EPA, Purdy number 1, Smith is all the way down at number 16. Stafford sorted by EPA all the way down at number 18. So again, Stafford has not been great ever since that Super Bowl. If you want to look at it visually, it's here. Purdy, Josh Allen, Mahomes in the upper right. This is why Purdy is going to command huge money. End of the day, performance matters. No matter how people try to spin this, efficiency measures performance and performance matters. Matthew Stafford, meanwhile, is over here on the left. He's an upper left-hand quadrant guy. Not far from Aaron Rodgers. So your over-the-hill QBs are both in a similar spot on this graph. And don't get me started with Baker Mayfield. I think he's done some fine stuff, but he's not in the league of the guys here in the upper right. That's how we look at things. The price wars, Purdy against Stafford. We got so much coming up here from the NFL Combine over the course of the next couple days. So really over the course of this next week, it's going to be fun to provide all of the updates. It's one of those events that brings everybody together from the football world into one spot, which is a whole heck of a lot of fun. We enjoy seeing everybody, including Jerry Jones, whenever the bus rolls around. I didn't get to the Pacers game tonight. They lost to Denver because I landed a little bit too late. But we'll hit a few steakhouses. We'll say hi to a bunch of people. And we'll talk to John Lynch on Wednesday. No Kyle Shanahan in all likelihood at this event, but Lynch is going to be here, probably already is here. That all is going to go down on Wednesday. So stay tuned for 49ers Intel. I'll have a lot of it tomorrow. No organized events tomorrow, but I'll be talking to a lot of people, and we'll be sure to update you throughout the course of the day. News today was that the 49ers re-signed Ben Barch. You saw the highlight reel. Well, we'll see Brad Graham tomorrow. He's a good guy. That'll be fun. See some of the 49ers content creators here in Indianapolis. We got it. Yeah. We're going to do an entire show on this at some point. Thanks for that, Mike. That's really nice. Mike sent me the messages from Malik Mustafa and Ronaldo Green. How about we talk about those tomorrow? Because Mustafa and Green, 49ers were able to nail those 2 draft picks last year. So they give advice to prospective rookies heading to the combine this year. They've got a couple nice messages that we'll get to in a show tomorrow. That one should be a lot of fun. I'll scour this for a couple questions, and then we'll be off into the night. Who's backup QB? I think Joe Flacco. It's a hot pick, right? Joe Flacco. Age 40. Bring him to the 49ers. Mike asking, can the 49ers afford Drew Dahlman? Well, how much do we think Dahlman's going to go for? Top of the center market's like $18 million per year. I think Dahlman goes between 10 and 15 million. I do think the 49ers like Jake Brendel more than fans like him. I don't think that he played his best football this past season. Maybe the 49ers think that, but we'll see what their opinion of Jake Brendel is. I do know that they've brought in competition. Matt Hennessy is on this team now. Drake Nugent was the undrafted rookie out of Michigan last year. Drew Dahlman is the popular name because he's morphed into possibly a top 5 center in football. But then the question is, does that command $15 million a year? Had an ankle injury last year, so only played 9 games. We're going to have answers to these questions within the next couple of weeks. I think that's going to be really exciting. Pharrell says $20 million. I don't think so. I think you got to be the very top center in football to push the market up. $20 million might be tough, although the cap has risen. So we'll see. Joe asking, is Dahlman a stronger choice than Ryan Kelly? Both of them missed like half the season last year with injuries. Kelly's a little bit older. Kelly's already been playing on a second deal. Kelly played for the Colts here in Indianapolis, still under contract with the Colts. He's scheduled to hit the market. He's been dealing with more injuries than Dahlman. He is older. I think Dahlman, what's really impressed me about Dahlman is that his pass protection got a lot better this past year. So he was always a good run blocker, a little undersized, but he's learned how to pass protect. He's shown an upward trajectory in this league. What position am I looking forward to? Defensive tackle. I am looking for defensive tackles at the NFL Combine. Can't wait to see how some of these guys test. Deion Walker fascinates me. The guy out of Kentucky, 6'7", 344 pounds. He's huge. So, yeah, this is the most loaded defensive tackle class that we've ever seen at the NFL Combine. 41. That's good. That's 41 guys invited to the Combine at one sub position. It's not even defensive line is the main position. Tackle. Just 41 defensive tackles. I get it. You got they have edge rushers, the Combine separated from the defensive tackle. But last year there was only 25 of them. You got more people talking about Tyler Warren. It's a deep tight end class, and he headlines it at Penn State. So we'll see. Val says, I want DT. He wants an edge rusher. I want everybody. If I'm drafting for a team, I want the best player at every single position. I just realized it doesn't always work that way. And I also know that I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, nor can the 49ers, because the draft is a living, breathing event, just like a football game. What should I ask John Lynch on Wednesday? Invader 49er, you're a good viewer. Why don't you guys toss in your questions into the comment section? And then I'll decide what I ask. Maybe I'll ask one of yours come Wednesday when I talk to John Lynch. All right, everybody, thanks for joining. We will talk to you very soon. Good night from Indianapolis here at the NFL Combine.